Ever since I started playing FromSoft games, you guys have been asking me to rate them, what I think about them, and I told you that I wouldn't do it unless I could play every single one of them to be fair about it. The time has come, I've officially beat them all, and I'm ready to give my official rankings. Now, the basis that I'm going to be grading these is the way that I played them. So I played the games in reverse. I started on Elden Ring and worked my way back all the way to Demon Souls. I want to know what you guys think about my list. Let me know what you would swap around, or if you just absolutely hate my list, let me know. I never played the original Demon Souls or Dark Souls, so I don't feel like it's fair for me to rate them. I also will only be rating these games against themselves, as far as like a catalog series. I'm not comparing it to games outside of it. So let's kick things off with Demon Souls. I played the PS5 remake, which was absolutely beautiful. I honestly think it was the best looking FromSoft game out there. It makes me want a Dark Souls 4 with the same graphics. So if they did that, I would absolutely go crazy over it. FromSoft, please, if you're listening, you need to do it. Even though Demon Souls looks really good, the game comes short in a lot of different areas. So the first one being, I didn't like the way that you traverse the worlds. It was like the tombstones. You had to go like 1-1, then 1-2, then go to 2-1, then 2-2, then go back to 1-3 because that opened up. And it got really confusing and it took me out of the world a lot of times. The other thing, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, but let me know what you think. I felt like most of the bosses were just gimmick fights, where it was just like, not you have to be good or skilled. It was a gotcha moment. The biggest complaint I have for Demon Souls is the final boss. I thought it was a troll. I thought there was like a phase 2 where something was going to come out, but no. It was the most anticlimactic finish to a Souls game that I have ever played in my life. That was the last fucking boss. And especially since I started on Elden Ring and worked my way back, I was like super emotional to finish it, and then that was the last boss, and I kind of felt like I got gypped. So with that being said, it's a fantastic game, but I'm gonna put it in the B category. Next on the list is Dark Souls Remastered. This game is super cool. It took a lot of things that Demon Souls did wrong and fixed it. And the first one being how interconnected the world is. The entire world map, it's brilliant, honestly. At any point in time, you can be traversing in a random direction and somehow end up back at the hub at a different place and go, oh, that's how I get there. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. I know the game is older, but my biggest complaint is you can only go left, right, forward, and back as far as directions for like pivoting. And I know that's just the time and when it came out. I 100% like acknowledge that. But that was like a big complaint to me, was that. The one thing about Dark Souls Remaster is after Anno Orlando, I feel like the game starts slowing down. It didn't have the same kind of energy. And I know that they were pressed for time, hence Bed of Chaos. That whole fight is just a mess in and of itself. But you could tell where the first half of the game was super polished, and then the second half of the game really kind of lacks. The soundtrack is absolutely amazing, and it's really cool to see the areas in Dark Souls 1 that you end up seeing later in like DS3. Since I played in reverse, I didn't have that same connection when I saw it in DS3. I was like, oh, whatever, like this area is cool. So when I saw it in DS1, I was like, oh, I was like, that was like a throwback. So it was really cool to experience it that way. But I'm gonna give Dark Souls Remaster an A. It's great, but it's not perfect. Next on the list is Dark Souls 2. This is like such a controversial one for me because I think the game is overhated. Because Miyazaki wasn't really involved with it until the DLC, I think that a lot of people just automatically sign off on it. I'm not going to say it's a perfect game by any means. It's got its flaws. And I played Scholar the First Sin or whatever it's called. And maybe the pre-version of that was even worse. I don't know. What I can say about Dark Souls 2 is that the first 30% of the game is really hard while you're getting your footing, and it plays a lot different than Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1. With that being said, they introduced power stancing, if I'm not mistaken, in DS2, which is super cool. And I can see how they used a lot of elements from DS2 to inspire things like Elden Ring. Even though DS2 was hard, and don't get me wrong, the mob placement sometimes was utter bullshit. There are certain times where I was like, how are you supposed to do this? It's crazy. Like, you're just getting jumped. However, with that being said, it has its charm. I like that Estus Flask wasn't very heavily important because you could get the healing shards. So it kind of took some of the difficulty away from the game because you could honestly have infinite healing at any point in time. I think the two biggest problems with DS2, ADP, one of the worst things that they could have ever added to the game. It's just an artificial difficulty booster. If you don't know, ADP basically is your iframes, how fast you traverse fog walls, and how fast you drink Estus flasks and use items. You have to level that up. Terrible idea. I don't know why they did it. But that aside, at least you can gain levels pretty fast in DS2. Majula, music is peak. Might be the best music out of any hub in any of the Souls games. I'll die on that hill. When you get to the DLC of DS2 though, it's really good. Like really good. It's fun, it's hard, there's really cool bosses, and it seemed to kind of get more flushed out the more they started working on the DLCs. So for me, I absolutely love DS2. I thought it was a great game. Do I think it's better than Dark Souls 1? I don't. But I don't think it's as bad as people make it seem. I think DS2 is better than most games that come out today, which is crazy to say that. My official ranking for Dark Souls 2, if we put graphics aside, I think it's better than Demon Souls. If we put graphics aside, just as like a core game. I forgot to put the OG Dark Souls 2 in there. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Next on the list is Dark Souls 3. This game is fantastic. I know a lot of people hate that it's linear, and I think that was one of the best things that they could have done. Because while DS1 and 2 are very open, you can kind of go in any direction, sometimes I just wanted to play the game instead of trying to figure out where the hell to go next. I just wanted to consume more of the game and just basically go, go, go. Like, give it to me. Like, what's the next area? What's the next boss? And I think that they did the right move by making DS3 more linear. They also increased the movement speed. I think the bosses are a lot more interesting. The soundtrack is phenomenal. The biggest complaint that I see with Dark Souls 3 is that you can start off with the Cell Sword Twin Blades as like a starting item. If you guys don't know, this is literally the best weapons in the fucking game, and their starting weapon for the, I think it's the Mercenary class. But where Dark Souls 3 really shines again is the freaking DLC. Sister Fried and Midir are phenomenal bosses, even though the Midir fight, the real boss is the camera. It's fun. It's amazing. It's a good challenge. Nameless King. There's just so many iconic bosses. For me personally, I've tried really, really hard to find something I don't like about Dark Souls 3, and I don't. I can't find anything. I think the game is perfect. Even the length is perfect. Like, everything about it. The map design is good, I thought. I thought the enemy placement was fantastic. There was enough exploration where it was rewarding if you didn't look in every, like, area. The NPCs were great. Storyline, side quest, all of it was great. Boss design, phenomenal. Audio was great. It's just a fantastic game. And they have Dark Souls 1 and 2, as well as Demon Souls, to thank for that, because clearly they paved the way and they were learning as they were going. So for me, I'm going to give Dark Souls 3 an official S ranking game. This game is one of those games that will forever mean the world to me. Just how amazing the journey of that game was. I wish I could overplay it or replay it time and time again for the first time. All right, time for what I think is going to be the most controversial rating. Bloodborne. Okay, so Bloodborne's really cool. I like Bloodborne. I don't care that it's 30 FPS. It never bothered me. I know a lot of people complain about it. I like the environment. I think the parry mechanic with the gun is really cool. Them switching from the Souls kind of to Bloodborne world was a smart move by them. Where I think I have a couple issues with Bloodborne. For starters, I hate farming for blood vials. It was one of the worst things in the game because after every boss fight, you had to basically just go farm for more vials. Or if you wanted to buy them, the cost was so much as you kept going through the game that it took away from leveling. So then you were grinding again to level up your character instead of just enjoying the game. It was too farmy for vials. The bullets, take it or leave it, you don't have to parry to beat the game, you know what I mean? Where Bloodborne gets super fun, in my opinion, is the DLC again. I don't know what it is with FromSoft and DLCs, but they really nail it. Ludwig is a fantastic boss, and Orphan of Kos is even better. Orphan of Kos was that same adrenaline pumping kind of boss where I felt like I was playing Elden Ring for the first time. He's fast, he's aggressive, crazy moveset. You really have to like lock down and get it down. He's a great challenge. Awesome boss design idea. Everything about that fight is fantastic. Bloodborne DLC is the peak of Bloodborne. If you're wondering why I say controversial rating for Bloodborne, I think people hype it up more than it is. A lot of people put Bloodborne on this holy grail that is untouchable and is perfect and is the best FromSoft game in the whole world, and I just don't see it. It's really good, but it's not perfect. It has its flaws. I also think a lot of the early game bosses, like the first half of the bosses, a lot of them are pretty forgettable. When you start getting to the back half of the game is when you get into the really cool bosses. And again, like I said, DLC bosses are absolutely peak. Besides Orphan of Kos, I will say this, the Lady Maria boss fight is awesome. Because you see where they got a lot of moves for other moves in Elden Ring, like seppuku and stuff like that. And to me, I felt like there was some inspiration from her going into Melania as far as moveset fights and stuff like that. You can kind of connect the dots as you play these games and say, oh, this inspired this, which inspired that. Like how Pontiff Sullivan inspired Rolana. You can just connect the dots. My official Bloodborne ranking is that it's an A, but I didn't like it more than Dark Souls 1. There's something special about Dark Souls 1 to me where it just felt more at home than Bloodborne. It's a fantastic game, but I hope if they do remake it, they fix some of that stuff, or if they ever do make a sequel, it's less grinding and farms. I know people are going to be like, oh, I'll get good and you won't have that problem. It's still a mechanic that I think shouldn't be that crazy. All right. We're on to Sekiro. This game is absolutely amazing. It's really good. It's freaking difficult. It pissed me off. I think I got gray hairs from this game. I have my love-hate relationship with it. On one hand, I love that there's no builds. And that's like everybody's biggest complaint on the game is that there's no build types, there's no different weapon types or anything like that. But this is the true peak of get good. The FromSoft community was talking shit the whole time, being like, get good, get good, get good. They made a game where you had to get good. There was no exception to it. Like, yes, there's prosthetics and stuff on how to fight certain enemies, but you either parried or you got smashed. That's Sekiro in a nutshell. My biggest complaint about Sekiro is there were like different side quests and missions where they didn't really tell you where to go. And I'll be honest, if I didn't have chat to tell me to go to certain areas to do different missions so I could fight people like Demon of Hatred, which by the way, I freaking hate him. That was the hardest fight in the game for me, was Demon of Hatred, which I beat him. Legitimately, I didn't cheese him. I would never have known how to do it. Like, never have known. Same with Father Al. I would never have known how to go back and fight him. That's my real only complaint with Sekiro. Other than that, Sekiro might be the most rewarding FromSoft game when you get it down. When you actually get the parries down and you learn the bosses and you just know the movesets, none of the other games hit on that level. They just don't. I would dare to say, I'm going to take a guess and say that Sekiro has the most people that have ever probably attempted the game and stopped because they couldn't get good at it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably has the highest drop-off rate. With that being said, I applaud them for going a different direction with this game. I think that everything about it is really, really, really good. I'm going to give it an S, but it does not take Dark Souls 3 for me. Sekiro is an S for sure, but in my heart of hearts, DS3 remains on top. Little side note as well, I kind of wish they made DLC for it. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe it just didn't do as well because a lot of people gave up, but I feel like DLC for Sekiro is a no-brainer. Could have been a lot of cool ways to go about it. So I wonder if they'll ever bring the story back or do something different with it. Who knows? But nonetheless, fantastic game. And last on the list is Elden Ring, where it all started for me. This game is an amazing game. The problem I have with Elden Ring is that it's ruined a lot of other games for me in terms of enjoyment. Elden Ring is such a 10 out of 10 game with the development and what they did with it, that it just goes to show you what happens when you put a little bit of extra effort into your games and really take the time to polish out stuff. Now, I'm not going to sit here and glaze Elden Ring to the point where we're saying it's absolutely flawless. The truth is, the reason it's as good as it is because all the other games that came before it walked so that it could run. They literally had so many different trial and errors and saw what people liked and didn't like that it was almost impossible for them not to get the formula right. Something about Elden Ring that I personally loved is the weapon variety. I know a lot of people get mad about certain builds in the FromSoft community, like bleed builds and stuff like that, but it's really cool. I think it's what gives it so much replayability is that you can do what feels like an infinite amount of builds, you know? especially when they brought the DLC in and they brought in different weapon types and whatnot. But Elden Ring's bosses are absolutely polished. The soundtrack is phenomenal. The NPCs are great. And I just think that FromSoft had 10 plus years of perfecting their craft to make Elden Ring what it is. This might be a super controversial outtake with Elden Ring. I think the base game is better than the DLC. And that's the only FromSoft title where I actually think that. All the other ones, I think the DLC is better than the base game. There's something about the base game that was just so perfect. And the DLC is phenomenal, just so that it's said. Amazing bosses, really, really cool area, a lot to explore. Something about the Shadow Tree fragments, there's something about it that I don't know, it didn't hit for me. It was more exploring, looking for those things to level up than just leveling up. And I know why they did it, because people played the game so much that they couldn't balance out the leveling for it without doing that. I get it. I still didn't like looking for them. With that being said, playing Elden Ring quite literally changed my life. It changed my entire career, it changed everything for me, and I will always love this game so much because it led me to so many more amazing games. And for me, I think it only makes sense to put Elden Ring at the very top of the S tier list because it is just the culmination of all of its prior games. How could you not make a perfect game when you had so many amazing games to base it off of? The last thing I'll say is I understand why a lot of FromSoft fans love FromSoft games, and they just love them. They're fantastic games. It's its own series that inspired a genre. For like Lies of P and Lords of the Fallen, and the list goes on and on and on. It's not often that you get games that literally make genres in today's day and age. So with that said, even though that some of these games are rated a B, in comparison to other games, I would still rate them higher as well, which is crazy because some of these games are 10 plus years old, and the fact that they still hold great value to this day is insane. Let me know what you think about my tier list. If you freaking hate it or I'm wrong, let me know. What would you switch around? Do you agree with me? Are there any points that you think that I missed? Or if you have a different kind of rating that you want me to do, like rating hubs or rating my favorite and worst bosses from each series, let me know.